It's fantastic having everybody here this morning. I reckon one of the questions that we together have to wrestle with is why does Christmas matter? Why does Christmas matter? I find it interesting that one of the proud atheists, who is one of the more brilliant singer-songwriters Australia that produced, Tim Minchin, had to confess that he loves Christmas. And he actually wrote a song. If you don't know if you come across it, there's two beautiful Australian songs that sort of capture an Aussie Christmas. And his song, White Wine in the Sun, was an attempt, if you listen to the lyrics, actually almost an attempt to make a confession. He's saying, look, I don't believe in Christmas, but I really, really like it. I'm not so sure about the, westernisation of a Palestinian and all that kind of stuff, but Christmas really matters. And there's something about Christmas. So what I want to do is just take a moment or two to show you the first verse and chorus. This is not a song you'd normally watch in church, but I think it captures a bit of the tension in the Australian culture, because there's something important, I reckon, about Christmas. Christmas matters. So this is Tim Minchin, and the first couple of minutes of that song, White Wine in the Sun. Let's see how we go.
I really like Christmas. It's sentimental, I know, but I just really like it. I'm hardly religious. I'd rather break bread with Dawkins than Desmond Tutu, to be honest. And yes, I have all of the usual objections to consumerism, to the commercialization of an ancient religion, to the westernization of a dead Palestinian press ganged into selling PlayStations and beer. But I still really like it. I'm looking forward to Christmas, though I'm not expecting a visit from Jesus. I'll be seeing my dad, my brother and sisters, my gran and my mum. They'll be drinking white wine in the sun. I'll be seeing my dad, my brother and sisters, my gran and my mum. They'll be drinking white wine in the sun. I don't go in for ancient wisdom. I don't believe just 'cause ideas are tenacious, it means that they're worthy. I get freaked out by churches. Some of the hymns that they sing have nice chords, but the lyrics are dodgy.
We'll reel it back at that point. You can go and listen to the whole song. I love that the spirit that comes through with Tim's song, and there's another song by another a great Australian singer-songwriter, Paul Kelly. Don't know if you've come across How to Make Gravy. And there's a similar spirit in both of them. Both of them have to. There's something about the dream of families getting together, but it's more than that. The emotional climax, or the emotional crescendo in Paul Kelly's song, How to Make Gravy, is actually a funny little prayer. He prays, "Oh, praise the baby Jesus, have a Merry Christmas. I'm really going to miss it, all the treasure and the trash." And there's something about, for Australians, there's something about Christmas that really, really matters. And I think it's more than family. I lived in Canada for a bit, and it was lovely over there. They had the tradition of Thanksgiving, and that was kind of the time when family came together. But there's something more to Christmas, and I find it interesting. Both Paul Kelly and Tim Minchin mention the baby. And there's something about the baby. I actually think these candles are part of it. These candles have, for the last 400 years that we know about, churches around the world have lit these Advent candles. The candles of hope, peace, joy and love. And then on Christmas Day, they light the Christ candle. And there's this picture, I think, in them of why Christmas really matters. There's this promise, I think, that Christmas is a time where we kind of know we all need hope, peace, love and joy. And there's this kind of simplistic promise that somehow Santa's going to turn up, and despite the fact he wears Coca-Cola coloured clothes and everything, he's going to bring that. But we all kind of know that it's not that. And I find it interesting that as we light those candles, I think part of the reason for a lot of people Christmas is also a really painful time is because they've had moments where they've longed for hope, peace, love and joy. It just hasn't come through. There's not a lot of people who don't have feelings about Christmas. People have strong feelings one way or the other. And I actually think to understand why, we've got to take Tim Minchin up on his challenge. I do think we've over-commercialised and over-westernised the baby. We've over-westernised Tim Minchin said, the story of Christmas to sell PlayStations and beers. In order to get a glimpse of why Christmas is so profound, I think if you've got a Bible or if you've got your phone if you've got a phone, there's a link to the notes in there. We're just going to go back to one of the earliest references we have to Christmas in the book of Micah. Now, that book was quoted in the Christmas story. Don't know if you remember, but there were wise men. It wasn't actually three wise men that turn up. And they turn up looking for the king. So they go to a palace, and the king who's actually in the palace is a little bit disturbed when they're saying, oh, guess what? There's a new king born. And they're actually looking for someone called the Messiah. It's not language we use much now, but the idea of the Messiah was promised in this passage in Micah that Ray read earlier. And we actually can date when this was written. It was written 700 years before the first Christmas. And we actually have physical copies of Micah, the book of Micah, that date to 75 BC. So we've actually got physical copies. We didn't have photocopiers back then, so that what they would do is sort of handwrite it out and pass it down the generations. But we've actually got physical copies promising Christmas that predate Christmas by about 75 years. And this was the promise. I think, like us, the Jewish people of that time were desperate for hope, peace, love and joy. And this promise said, from you, Bethlehem Epaphra, which is the region that Bethlehem was in, it also means fruitfulness. It's a place where King David was born. There's going to be a ruler who comes. And so they expected the baby to come. They expected what they called the Messiah to come and kick the Romans into the sea. They expected the baby to come and be a military leader, to be the one they'd finally looked for. It goes on and it says, The people of Israel are going to be having a hard time until the woman gives birth. And he will stand to lead his flock with the Lord's strength, the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. Then his people will live there undisturbed, for he will be highly honoured around the world. And listen to this, he will be the source of their peace. It is, I think a lot of people like Tim Minchin are freaked out by churches, because churches can be kind of weird places at times, where they get together and sing songs and light candles, and sadly, there have been horrific stuff that we've had to face over the last, really the last 10, 15 years in the history of churches. What I love in our culture in Australia, I think people don't mind Jesus. There's something about, I love for us, there's something in the Australian culture, we kind of know what a good bloke looks like. And we're not so into people that big note themselves. Like when it comes to Anzac Day, we pick Simpson to be a hero, not the Douglas MacArthur or generals or whatever. We pick a bloke who never have fired a shot in anger. And I think there's something in the Australian culture that responds to Jesus. And I think partly it's because we respond to the fact that he didn't fit the mould. He didn't come to kick the Romans into the sea. In fact, at the end of Micah chapter 5, where this is all written, God actually says there in the Bible something that should have twigged that this is going to be different. You see, people really did think that there was going to be a military victory. And so it can be really tempting in our culture too to think, if there are people you disagree with, it can be tempting to think what I've got to do is overpower them. This baby grew up to be someone who said, no, you don't get to overpower your enemies. Your task is to love your enemies. And there are three things at the end of the book of Micah, the end of Micah chapter 5, that didn't fit what people were expecting. The first thing, at the end of Micah chapter 5, God says that when this baby turns up, he's going to get rid of all your armies. It actually says, I'm going to get away, deal with your horses, your chariots, your walls. Your power isn't going to be the thing that wins the game. Which was there written 75 years before the first Christmas. That somehow this baby was going to do something that wasn't what people expected. He also said, I'm not going to validate your religious stuff. He says, I'm going to do away with all your high places and religious actions, and back then they used the term witchcraft for stuff that you do in order to organise the world around you. So I'm going to get rid of all that stuff. I'm going to get rid of your religious stuff. So he wasn't going to be a military leader, and he wasn't going to be a religious person. And he said, I'm going to get rid of your idols. Idols are things we don't talk a lot about, but I came across they reckon he was one of the great American novelists, a fellow by the name of David Foster Wallace. I don't know if you've heard of him. He wrote a book called Infinite Jest. And he said something that I find helpful. He said, look, all of us have a God kind of thing. All of us have something in our life that is most important. He says this, in the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there is no such thing as atheism. There's no such thing as not worshipping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And an outstanding reason for choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship is that pretty much anything else will eat you alive. He says, if you worship money and things, if they're where you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough. Never feel you have enough. It's the truth. Worship your own body and beauty and sexual allure, and you'll always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you'll die a million deaths before they firmly plant you. Worship power, and you'll feel weak and afraid, and you'll need ever more power over others to keep fear at bay. Worship your intellect, being seen as smart, and you'll end up feeling stupid, a fraud, always on the edge of being found out. The insidious things about these forms of worship is not that they're evil or sinful, it's just that they're unconscious. They're your default settings. They're the kind of worship that you just gradually slip into day after day, getting more and more selective about what you see and how you measure value without ever being fully aware that that's what you're doing. One of the challenges for all of us, I think, is we all have things that we value. There is something in your life that you value most, and whatever that is God for you. Whatever the thing in your life that you value most is your God. And I think David Foster Wallace is right. If that isn't the actual God, there's every chance that thing is going to eat you alive. And this is where, let's be honest, Christmas is not politically correct. We live in a world that says the most important thing you can do is to go down deep inside, work out what you're feeling, and be true to those feelings. Christmas says, no, there is a baby born in Bethlehem who comes and makes a claim that we sing every year, the Maya Music Bowl, Carols by Candlelight. We were a bit too scared to go there as a band. We couldn't quite pull it off. But the Hallelujah chorus, the lyrics of the Hallelujah chorus are taken straight out of the book of Revelation. And it says, King of kings and Lord of lords. I feel like we should start all standing. King of kings and Lord of lords, and he shall reign. And he shall reign forever and ever. The promise of the baby wasn't that he was going to come and kick the Romans into the sea, but as Isaiah said about 40 years before Micah was written, and again, this is another historical document, he said, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive with child. She will give birth to a son and call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. The incredibly politically incorrect thing that Christmas is about is that there is a baby who comes to be King of Kings and Lord of Lords and to be the source of your life. He comes and says, you are not going, you can, if you like, chase beauty or intellect or money or power. You can chase all that stuff, but ultimately it won't get you where you want to go. The place to go to find real life is the baby who grew up to be the man who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And one of my favourite verses is he says, I have come that they might have life and have it to the full. And he's not just talking about when you die there, he's talking about now. A philosopher who has been important to me, he said, look, we actually need to, his name's by the name of Dallas Willard, he said, we actually need to let Jesus prove himself. Put Jesus to the test. He said, putting Jesus Christ into a worldwide competition with all known alternatives is the only way we can give our faith a chance to prove his power over the whole of our lives. Jesus says, I didn't come to be your mascot. I didn't come just to be your nice little safe Christmas ornament. I came to show you where life is. He actually says, I'm not gonna back off. I'm not going to let you go down the path of trying to just self-validate. He says, I'm going to give you some commandments. I'm going to tell you what to do. And they're going to be a bit inconvenient. He says, when you obey my commandments, you remain in my love just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I've told you these things so you may be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. This is the commandment. Love each other. Love each other in the same way I've loved you. There's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. The incredible paradox at the heart of Christmas is this. This world tells you you will only be happy if you work out what you want to do and do what you want to do. Christmas says, in the Christmas story, says you will find yourself as you're willing to give up yourself and follow him. And as you do that, learn to love other people. The more you take your eyes off yourself, funnily enough, the more truly yourself you will actually become. Christmas, as it turns out, was never about commercialism and selling stuff. It was never about you. It's also a lot more than family. Christmas is about the baby born in Bethlehem who grew up to be the man who invites us to a whole and full life as we're willing to lay down at the manger all the stuff that we try and fill our lives with, all the idols that ultimately will never satisfy. I might just pray and then we'll sing a couple more carols. So Jesus, as we come on this Christmas, in this Christmas season, we acknowledge we do look for life in all the wrong places. Help us be open to the life that only comes through you. Where we are worshipping stuff that is going to eat us alive, help us be honest about that. And help us give our lives to you, Jesus. We ask this in your name. Amen.